Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents, a folklore podcast where I read you to sleep or until the next story. I'm your host, Dustin. And a big shout out to my Patreons. I am up to earning, I think it's $11 a month. It's a place where I put all the stories that are too spicy for the main feed. And today we are back in the book of Indian folklore written down by Dracott. In the first story, we learn about a shape-shifting jackal. In the second, an offhanded remark leads to hard labor. And in the third story, a man-eater helps a policeman find her husband and father-in-law. Confused? Let's begin. The Weaver. There was a weaver who was unmarried, and all that he could earn in a day, in exchange for the cloth he wove, only amounted to 2 pounds of grain. One day, he cooked some kitchery, and placing it on a plate, left it to cool, and went out to sell his cloth. While he was away, Jackal came and ate up the kitchery, and on his return, he found the jackal, so he tied it up and beat it severely. Then he cooked some bread, which he ate, and again beat the jackal. The poor creature thought, "Now I will die, if this man keeps on beating me in this way." When the man next went out to sell his cloth, the jackal, tied up by itself, felt very lonely, especially as it could hear its companions howling in the jungles. And so it began to howl too, and hearing it, one of its friends came to see where it was, and finding it said, "Brother, what are you doing here?" The poor jackal, bruised all over and swollen from the beating it had received, replied, "Friend, a man has caught me, and takes the greatest care of me. See how fat I have grown, with eating all the halwa puris he gives me? If you will release me, I will tie you here, and you will get a share of the good things." So the two exchanged places, and the first jackal ran gladly back into the jungle. When the weaver returned, he, as usual, began to beat the poor creature, who then spoke and said, "Why are you beating me?" The weaver, surprised, replied, "I never heard this jackal speak before." "That one has gone, and he tied me up here in his place, and told me I should get all sorts of good things to eat. But if you will release me, I will arrange a marriage with the king's daughter for you." "What?" said the man. "I'm only a poor weaver. And can you really get me married to the king's daughter?" "Yes," returned the jackal. So the weaver released it, and it turned itself into a Brahmin, and it crossed the river and presented itself at the court of the certain Rajah, to whom it said, "O king, I have found a rich weaver caste Rajah who wishes your daughter's hand in marriage." The Rajah, much pleased, consented, and the Brahmin, on getting outside of the palace, once more turned into a jackal and returned to the weaver. "Follow me," he said, "and I will take you to the king's daughter." So the weaver took up his blanket, which was all he owned. On their way, they met a dhobi, or a washerman, carrying his bundle of clothes. The jackal gave him a gold coin and told him to spread all the clean clothes he possessed upon the trees around. Further on they met a cotton beater, or a man who beats cotton and prepares it to make into pillows and quilts. To him they also gave a gold coin, and asked in return for several large balls of cotton. These they carried on a large plate to the river, and the jackal, leaving the weaver, returned as a Brahmin to the Rajah, who had seen the dhobi's clothes in the distance and thought that they were tents pitched by her daughter's future husband. The jackal had told the weaver to watch, and as soon as he saw him enter the palace, he was to take large lumps of cotton and throw them one by one into the river, so that they might be seen flowing downstream. "The bridegroom," explained the Brahmin, "has met with a terrible accident. All his possessions and his followers are lost in the river, and only he and I remain, dressed in the clothes in which we stand." Then the Rajah ordered his musicians and followers to come out, and go with horses in great pomp to the weaver, who was then married to the princess. After the marriage, the Brahmin said, "This son-in-law of yours has lost all he had. What is the use of his returning to his country? Let him stay here with you." To this the Rajah, who loved his daughter, gladly consented, and gave them a fine house and grounds. Now the weaver, who was not accustomed to good society, or to living with those above his station in life, made a salam, or obeisance, such as a poor man is wont to do, to his wife every morning, and she began to suspect that he had deceived her, and was not a real Rajah. She asked him one day to tell her the whole truth about himself, and so he did. "Well," she said, "you have owned up to me, but do not let my father or mother know. For now that I am married to you, things cannot be altered, and it is better that they should remain in ignorance. But whatever my father may ask of you to do, promise me that you will do it, always answering, 'Yes, I will,' to anything he suggests." To this the weaver agreed, and shortly afterwards the Rajah called him and inquired if he was willing to help him. And as promised, the man replied, "Yes, I will." Then he went to his wife and told her, and she commended him. The next day the king told him that two brothers by the name of Darya and Barjo threatened to fight and take his kingdom from him, and he desired his son-in-law to go to the stables and select a horse to ride into battle. In the stables was a horse that was standing on 3 legs. "This," thought the weaver, "will just suit me, for it seems lame and has only 3 legs to go on, and making this as an excuse, I'll lag behind all the rest, and be well out of danger." Now this horse used to eat a 1/4 pound of opium daily, and could fly through the air. So when the Rajah heard of this selection, he was very delighted, and said to himself, "What a clever man this is, that he is able to discover which is the best horse." The next day he mounted the horse, but he was shivering and shaking so bad that he tied 2 millstones to his legs. As soon as the groom released the horse, it flew up into the air, then down again, then up through the branches of the trees, which broke off and clung to the weaver's arms and body, so that he made a strange spectacle. He was terrified and kept crying out, "O Darya, Barjo, for your sakes I have come to my death." The 2 princes, Darya and Barjo, seeing this strange horse flying through the air, and hearing their names coming from such a strange object all covered with branches, were very much alarmed, and said, "There had better not be another of these. One is certainly bad enough." So they wrote to the king and said, "We have seen your warrior. You stay in your country and we will stay in ours. We cannot fight." And they sent him a peace offering. The end. Story number 2. The Dog Who Was a Rajah. Once a daughter was born to a Brahmin and his wife, and from the day of her birth, every day a dog came in and lay down in the house. This made the mother say, in jest, when the child would not cease crying, "Stop, or I will give you to the dog." And the Brahmin added, "I will give her to the dog when she is grown up." When the girl grew up, he said to the dog one day in a fit of temper, "Here, take my daughter and do with her as you wish." The mother now regretted her jest, which had given the idea to her husband, and said, "Here, my child, take this handful of seeds, and as you go, throw them along the road, so that I may know where to find you." As the girl went along, she scattered the seeds, and at last arrived in the field, in which was a small bauli, or well. Here she sat down and told the dog that she was thirsty. "Go and drink from the well," said the dog. As she approached, the dog followed her, and they saw a ladder leading to the bottom of the well, so that they climbed down and came to a fine house with lovely gardens and flowers, and servants ready to receive them. These belonged to the dog, who was in reality a Rajah, and only assumed the shape of a dog when he left the well. Sometime after this, the Brahmin expressed a wish to go and visit his daughter. So his wife told him to follow the track of any freshly sprung up little plants he might see. He followed her directions and found the small trees leading to the well, and as he felt thirsty, he looked in and saw the ladder. So he climbed down and found the dog had become a Rajah. Going around the grounds with his daughter, he noticed a house made of gold. "What is this?" he asked. "It's for you, father." So he went in and found that everything was perfect, except that in one of the walls was a great crack. That crack, explained the Rajah, who had joined them, was caused when you first drank water at the well, and it will remain there until you undo the wrong you have done in giving your daughter to a dog, for you did not know then who he really was. To undo the wrong, you must serve me as a herder for 12 years, after which time the crack in the wall will heal on its own. The Brahmin then went to his wife and told her all that had happened, and they returned together to the Rajah, whose cows he tended for 12 years, after which the crack in the golden wall came together by itself, and thus the wrong was righted. The end. Okay, and the final story. The fourth wife is the wisest. There was a Bunia who only had a son, who had married 4 wives. Of these, 3 were fools, and only 1 was wise. For some reason, the Rajah of that country got angry with the Bunia, and said that he and his family all had to go away, for he would not permit them to remain in the kingdom any longer. Also, they were not allowed to take away any of their jewels or possessions with them, except for what they were wearing at the time. Hearing this, the youngest of the 4 wives asked that she might be allowed to bake some bread, to take with them, to eat on the journey. This was permitted, and in kneading the flour, she dropped 4 very valuable and beautiful rubies into it. And then, having cooked the bread, she showed it to the people as she left, and said, "See, I'm taking nothing with me except this bread." They journeyed far away into another country and were very poor. Then the Bunia said to his youngest daughter-in-law, "Daughter, what are we to do to live? We have no money or clothes." She was silent for a long time and then said, "We must sell our jewels, but in the meantime take this," giving him one of the rubies, "and sell it." Now this ruby was worth a very great deal of money, and the Bunia took it gratefully, thinking what a wise girl his daughter-in-law was, to think of bringing it as she had. He went to a rich merchant, who was, in all reality, not a merchant at all, but a clever thief, and who, as soon as he set his eyes on the ruby, knew it to be valuable and needed to have it. "Go," he said to one of his servants, "and bring me a basket full of money so that I can buy this gem." And as the servant left, he turned to the Bunia, offering him a chair, and said, "Sit down, friend." Now this chair was a specially prepared one, set as a trap for the unaware. The seat was of raw cotton, under which a great hole which anybody who sat in the chair would fall into. It was carefully covered over with a piece of clean white cloth, so that nothing was noticed. The poor Bunia sat on it, and as the soft cotton gave way under him, he found himself in the hole, over which the thief carefully placed a great stone and left him, while he quietly pocketed the ruby. Since the Bunia did not return to his home for many days, his daughter-in-law called her husband and gave him the second ruby, and said, "Go to find your father, and if you find him, bring me back this ruby, and buy food and clothes with the one you will find with him." The young man searched high and low for his father, but, not finding him, he decided to sell his ruby, and by some bad luck he went to the same merchant who had robbed the Bunia. The thief treated him in exactly the same way, and after having stolen the ruby, trapped him in the same hole as his father. Finding that neither husband nor father returned, the woman sold her jewels and bought some clothes and food for the rest of the family. But for herself, she secretly bought the outfit of a policeman, and resolved to work as one. So she presented herself at the king's court, and he, taking a fancy to the handsome face of the young man, for she was disguised as such, gave her employment. Living in the jungle near that place was a terrible Rakshasa, or evil spirit, and that night, while on duty, the new policeman was startled by a roar like that of a tiger. But as soon as the Rakshasa saw him, it assumed the form of a woman, and coming up it said weeping, "The Rajah has hanged my husband, and I wish to see him once more, but I cannot reach because the gallows are so high." "Climb on my back," said the policeman. The woman did so, but as soon as she got near enough, she began to eat her supposed husband. On this the young policeman, drawing his sword, cut off the woman's head, and as it fell, being enchanted, she disappeared, but a silver anklet from one of her feet was left behind. Next morning the policeman carried the anklet to the king and told him what had happened, and how the strange woman had disappeared as he struck her with his sword. The king was very much pleased at the youth's bravery, and also with the silver anklet, which was full of precious stones of great value, and turning to the policeman said, "Ask what you will, and I will give it to you, even if you ask for my daughter in marriage." The man replied, "Oh, king, I ask for nothing, but grant me, I pray for control over the entire bazaar, that I may kill, banish, or hang, or release, and do as I like with the people who dwell there." The king granted this request, and having discovered the thief and the supposed merchant, the policeman went to him and boldly demanded the release of his father and son. But the thief denied all knowledge of the affair. Then the young man entered the shop, and lifting up a great stone, beheld the two unfortunate men who were nearly starved to death. Having released them, he took the thief to the king, and told him what had happened. After they had hung the wicked thief, the young policeman changed his clothes and returned a woman. The king was greatly surprised, but so pleased at all she had done, that he called her his daughter, and gave her husband, father, and other relatives money and goods, so that they lived in contentment for the rest of their lives. The end. That first story was a lovely version of Fake It Until You Make It. It had echoes of Kara Mustafa and The Brave Little Tailor. And the second was a good case of be careful what you ask for. Although I did like that the Brahmin wasn't too proud to go and fix his wrongs. The third story was a lovely recall to the Rakshasa stories. And I always enjoy when the wife is the smart one. There are plenty more stories, and so I will keep on recording them. And the podcast Shoutout is to school me. It's a show about the teaching profession. I enjoy it, and you might too. And the listener shoutout is to Kigali, Rwanda. If I get a chance to go there, I would love to see the Green Mosque. And so to my listener in Kigali, I say, in Kinyarwanda, Murakoze kandi mugire ijoro ryiza. Thank you, and good night.